is near the top of your screen, and it looks like a little bubble. So click on that and type in there. Also, at the end of today's meeting, we'll have a tailgate, which will allow some more time for further discussion. And now for our safety moment. Rob?
Perfect. Thank you, Julie. Just bear with me a moment while I get this up and shared with you folks. Work. So it will take me but a moment.
Did you say but?
I did say but a moment, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. It's great to work with such informal people. I bet I'm just sharing my own screen, aren't I?
Oh, we can see it.
Yeah, I can't get the audio to come up. Give me again another second here. Any audio coming across?
Nope.
No.
Of course not. Give me Bill Gates. I'm gonna call Bill Gates right now and complain. One more time for good measure. Yeah, it's not letting me get the drop down for noise here. Somebody's got some barking dogs. Come on, audio.
There we go.
There we go. We got audio now?
Yep.
Not every yard you're going to enter will be smooth or paved. Some areas will be rough and uneven. In a perfect world, everything would be solid, dry, and stable, but that often isn't the case. Evaluate your surroundings. How is the ground? Is it uneven? Is it soft? Is it rutted? What hazards are visible and what hazards are hiding below the surface? This understanding of your environment is just the first step. What you do next is just as critical. If we're in a hurry, if we are distracted, or if our hands are full, then the possibility of missing something obvious is much greater. Is this the best place to put your foot? What if you're not holding the grab handle? Have you added unnecessary risk for the sake of convenience? Prior to exiting the cab, look, hold, and step. Look for a solid piece of ground, hold onto the grab bars, step down and test the surface before putting all of your weight onto it. We often need to carry things with us when we leave the cab. If that's the case, set it on the floor or on the seat so that your hands are kept free. Look, hold, step, climb out safely, and then retrieve your items. It's the best way to do it. Trip hazards exist in many places. Frost heaves, the uneven settling of concrete floors, and floor grates all create trip hazards. Be aware of your surroundings. If your job duties require the use of a ladder, make sure it's in good shape and on even ground. You might not be that high off the ground, but a fall from even a moderate height can cause serious injuries. Look to minimize the risks of uneven playing fields.
So as previous to this, all of our microlearn videos that we have released to date in association with Canada Cartage are available on the AMTA's YouTube channel. And we'll probably throw a link into this chat here as well. So that's it for me. Back to you, Julie.
Thanks, Rob. Item number 4 is Robin Peterman on National Day of Mourning.
I just had to get my mic all set up there. Everybody can hear me? Can you hear me, Julie?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I was asked to put something together for the April 28th Workers' Day of Mourning. April 28th is recognized every year as a Workers' Memorial Day and as International Workers' Memorial Day in over 100 countries around the world. And in Canada, it is known as the National Day of Mourning. Today, April 28th, flags fly at half-mast across Canada. Some observe it by lighting candles, laying wreaths, and wearing commemorative pins and ribbons and or black armbands. And many stop to observe a moment of silence, remembering those workers across our nation whose lives have been lost or affected by workplace injuries, disabilities, and disease. This is never an easy day, and it's especially more difficult this year because of the pandemic. Canadian Stats, with the Association of Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada, will tell you that in 2019, 925 workplace fatalities were recorded in Canada, of which 165 were Albertans. And it's estimated that in 2020, 920 workers died, and these facts aren't confirmed as yet. But we do know that 150 Albertans lost their lives. And with COVID, worker deaths are only going to increase the number in 2021. Stats aside, these are fathers, mothers, sons and daughters, grandparents and grandchildren, and others with relationships we have whom we remember on this day. And we need to really reflect on the people, not really the numbers, although they're horrendous. Anne Tenier, President and CEO of the Canadian Centre of Occupational Health and Safety, stated, and I quote, "Behind every workplace death and injury are family members, friends, co-workers who are directly affected. They're left behind and deeply impacted. Their lives also forever changed." And again, COVID-19 pandemic has brought this into even sharper focus for Canadians. Ms. Tenier also says one death is one too many, and it's for this reason we also look to strengthen our resolve to create safe workplaces and protect workers. Yes, April 28th is the day we remember workers who have died, were injured, or became ill on the job, but remembering is not enough. This day has evolved in a remembrance to also include to become a day that we as employers and safety professionals renew our commitment to do better, protecting workers and preventing further workplace tragedies. This is especially true in the face of COVID-19, of course. Lastly, on a more personal level, this is the day whereby each and every one of us needs to recommit ourselves to behaving in a safe manner, doing the things we do in that safe manner. We all know we can do better, we can make better choices, and we need to remember that there are others counting on us to make the safe decisions so we can go home at the end of each and every day and enjoy our time with family and friends. I ask you to think upon these things as we observe a minute of silence to honor those who've lost their lives or have been affected by a workplace injury, disability, and disease. 1 minute of silence, please. Thank you very much, everybody. Back to you, Julie.
Thanks, Robin. Does anybody have anything to add to the agenda? If you do, just throw it in the chat and we'll get to it. There is also the roundtable at the end of the meeting and a tailgate after the meeting's over. So let's move on to Dale, the membership update.
Well, thank you so very much. Yeah, since January, I would like to welcome Kronos Construction, Moon Heavy Haul, Pioneer Safety Solutions, Ridgeline Heavy Haul, Two Men in a Truck, Edmonton South, Economical Insurance, Bauer Oilfield Services, Next Generation Reforestation, DTS Trucking Limited, Karma Consulting Solutions Limited, Competition Trailer Sales, Incan Transport, Grizzly Force, Cantrol, Mega Courier Services, DNA Truck Analysis, Cal Tire Yellowhead, Tamarack Freight, Double Haul Contracting, Polar Coach Lines, Truck Safe Transport Education, Tricklecrete Transport Limited, High Tech Fuel Systems, Veterans Express Secure Logistics, Day and Ross, Truck Safety Solutions, Fleetworks Repair Center, Exxon Canada, Able Consulting, Phone Shop Communications, Fleetways, McCoshams, and Stantec Consulting have all joined the AMTA since January. So big shout out and welcome to all our new members.
Thanks, Dale. We'll move on to the reports section now. Sheriff Highway Patrol, Sergeant Morris Steen.
Hello,
Hi.
this is my first time at your meeting, so I'm not really sure what you're expecting.
Are there any updates or happenings going on with the Highway Patrol right now? Any upcoming, news?
Well, I'm sure everybody knows that Road Check 2021 will be coming into effect on May 5th to 6th, or May 5th to 7th, 2021. And their primary focus this year will be on hours of service and lighting. Other than that, there's nothing really too much going on in our department, other than we're still amalgamating with commercial vehicle enforcement, amalgamating with the Sheriff Highway Patrol in the province. Can't really think of anything else, sorry.
Well, and Morris, if I can just jump in for a second, is there any violations that are really prominent in your jurisdiction that you're noticing that our membership can address?
Well, I was told that maybe I could talk about the CVSA statistics for March in the province. So we had a total of 314 level 1 inspections for March, and that was and then an out of service rate of, actually, sorry, looking at the wrong thing, 688 inspections, and 314 of those inspections were placed in an out of service condition, which makes up 45.6% of all of our inspections that we did in March. We did some school buses, 32 in March, of which 5 were placed in an out of service condition. No motor coaches, and we did 1,237 level 2 inspections. So those are our walk around inspections, which placed 563 vehicles in an out of service condition, which would be 45.5%. So the level 1s and the level 2% range were basically pretty much the same at 45.6 and 45.5%. So far in April, we've only done 161 inspections and 397 inspections for a total of 161 that were placed in an out of service condition. So that level is going down now that the out of service rate was only 40.5%. And the total of level 2 inspections we did was 595. And the total that were out of service were 297, which was a 49.9% out of service rate. So that was a little bit higher than in March. But we're not completely finished yet for the month of April, so I haven't got the complete statistics for that.
So just to confirm with you, Morris, the Blitz, is that from May 5th to 7th?
Yes.
Okay, and then we had another question pop up, was Is that a larger number for out of service than normal? You kind of indicated there at the end that it might be a few percentage points higher.
Well, in relation to the overall out of service rate, I would think that anything above 40% would be high, in my own opinion.
Yeah.
For the years, I've been in this line of work for 32 years, and generally the out of service rate stays mid 30s throughout North America. And some of these numbers are really high, like anything that gets into the 40s, I believe is a fairly high number. And for March, we had 45.6 and 45.5. But who's to say exactly what those out of service conditions were? Like,
Right. So you're not noticing any definite trends, breaks or other equipment or lack of paperwork, those kinds of things?
not really, nothing that I have off the top of my head anyway, or statistics in front of me.
I was just checking in case the question came up.
And we did have a long combination vehicle check at the Vermilion Vehicle Inspection Station on April 21st to 23rd. And those statistics weren't very good either in relation to the long combination vehicles. There was only 3 of us that were doing those inspections because due to COVID-19, we're not setting up very many large checks that run around the clock.
Right.
So I'm just opening up. So what we did was a total of 15 level 1 inspections, or 15 inspections, of which 11 were level 1 and 4 were level 2. And on day 1, the only out of service condition that we found was an inspection that I did for a rear signal lamp on the rear trailer. And he fixed that on site, so he was on his way. On day 2, we had several cargo securement issues where there was a dust cover ready to fall off, and some wheel chocks lying on in the groove of the fuel tank, and some airbags were deflated on one of the trailers. And on day 3, we had 2 vehicles that failed the air loss rate test because of holes in the airline. And we also found one of the dollies were not, the safety chains weren't connected to the lead trailer. So those are some of the things that we found for our LCV check that we had last week.
Yeah, and the safety chains are going to be a big issue, especially after what happened last year in Edmonton.
Oh, definitely. And it's so easy to pick up on those things if you do a thorough walk around inspection.
So another question come in, Morris, as well, about hours of service. Is there no grace with any of the officers when it comes to drivers trying to send in hours of service logs on a satellite unit? So I'm guessing that we're probably talking about a delay in the communications between the uploading and into the system.
Well, I guess it all depends on how long it takes. Because if, for instance, if I've stopped the driver and I asked him for his daily logs during the level 1 inspection, usually a level 1 inspection could take anywhere from a half hour to an hour to complete. And if those daily logs aren't there by then that would be a problem.
Because I know in the past when I was working with e-logs, we had an issue if you were in an area where you didn't have good cell coverage, for example. But I would think that it should remain on the device itself, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second question, being that some of them are new and still learning e-logs, are we giving any grace periods for novices working the systems?
We're novices as well. Trust me. Like, we don't know exactly on how to run every different type of e-log that's out there. So we're counting on the drivers to help us walk through them as well.
Yeah, and to that end, I believe the standard does require that the driver has an instruction card to go with that particular system to give to you folks.
Yes, but most of the time, all the drivers are pretty good and they know what they're doing. And some of them don't always know on how to send the information by an email to us, right, which is a lot easier for us to be able to look at versus looking at it on the driver's tablet or whatever. First of all, I don't like to handle any of that equipment. Like, I don't like to handle the tablet or their cell phone or anything like that, because if I end up dropping something like that, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want that liability.
Yeah, no doubt.
So another question came in. How are you preparing for ELD mandate compliance checks?
Well, right now we're not preparing at all yet. The mandate's supposed to come in June 12th, 2021, but we have not seen or heard of anything from Transport Canada. So as far as we know, we're still going to be implementing the date. There's going to be a 12-month grace period after the initial date. But we're not aware of any companies out there right now from Canada that are approved to operate an ELD device. There is one company that's capable of certifying the ELDs in Canada, FP Innovations, but I'm thinking that most carriers are going to be using the same ELD companies from the US, for where there's about 68 different ELD companies in the US.
Well, so I don't want to steal any of Andy's thunder, because Andy's going to be getting into ELDs in a bit. So if you've got ELD comments or questions, we'll hold off until probably the end when we do the tailgate party. So we'll get Andy to discuss that in a little bit, and then hopefully he will address those questions that the other folks have. So I think Morris, I think we can call that good for you for today. So.
Okay, well, thank you. I didn't really know what to expect, so now I do.
And you did fine. So Jules, back to you.
Thank you. Connie, AMTA event update.
Uh-oh, Connie.
Connie, are you on mute? Maybe we'll come back to Connie here in a minute, and we'll move on to the WCB update. Deb and Leanne.
Hi, it's Leanne today. So just wanted to remind employers, everybody that's on today, about the 2021 legislative changes. So the government of Alberta recently passed legislative changes that impact your workers' compensation systems. All changes are effective April 1. And the changes effective April 1 include new or revised policies. So formalizing the workers' and employers' duty to cooperate in all aspects of a safe return to work. We also have the new Fairness Review services, and they're being provided by the Fairness Review Officer through the Fair Process Review Center. So lots of new words for us here, and lots of new acronyms for everyone to get to know. The appeal advisory services for workers and employers will be provided through the advisor office and remain free of charge. On new claims with the date of accident on or after April 1, 2021, employers are no longer required to contribute to group health benefit plans for injured workers who are off work. Injured workers will continue to receive medical and rehab benefits related to their injury from WCB through the life of the claim, but employers may voluntarily opt to cover health benefits after an injury, so that's still an employer's right to do that. The Medical Panel Office, or MPO, closes, and the role of the Medical Panels Commissioner transitions to the Appeals Commission. So medical panels are used as an effective tool to resolve differences in medical opinions related to an injured worker's claim. The window for appeals to the Appeals Commission is aligned with the existing one-year window review by the Dispute Resolution and Decision Review Body, or DRDRB for short. And again, there's lots of information on our legislative changes available on our website, and we are still doing Bill 47 sessions, as well as the lovely Deb has recorded a recording of all the changes. So if you don't have time to attend the session, you can just go to our website and listen to her talk about all the changes that just went through. Again, there's still a few dates left for the seminars on the legislative changes. Go to our website and check that out and register there. We have updated our injury reporting forms. So the worker and employer forms have all been updated. So if you're using the online session, the online system, you'll notice the changes there, as well as all the online forms have been updated as well. The My WCB mobile app for employers is available. So just a reminder that that's out there. There is also an app available for workers to use. So just a reminder of that as well. I think the workers actually came out before the employers, if I remember correctly. And again, the WCB, we're always looking at companies who are interested in hiring workers. We have our training on the job program, and you can join us virtually for lunch and learns. I think we talked about it not long ago at one of the AMTA regional meetings about the training on the job programs, the wage subsidy for employers, the protection from lawsuit while the worker is in that program. We also just wanted to remind folks about our psychological health and safety leader in the workforce. We have a partnership with the University of Fredericton, and it offers Alberta employers exclusively reduced rates to online certificate programs in psychological health and safety in the workplace and enhancing workplace resiliency. Again, so quite a good discount for those courses for you as employers to take. And I also had on my list just to talk about the day of mourning, but Robin's already covered that pretty thoroughly. So that's all I've got for today.
Thanks, Leanne.
Okay.
Connie, are you able to give us an AMTA event update?
How about Kelsey? Kelsey, are you able to do that update?
Sure, I can give you guys a brief update. Big thing is our Calgary Golf Tournament has been moved from June to August 11th. You can check out details on all of our events on our website. We had our AGM and open board meeting on April 16th virtually. That was really successful. Thank you for everyone who attended. And then we had our awards gala just this past Friday on the 23rd. Congratulations to all the winners. You guys all did an amazing job at your presentations, and thank you to all our sponsors who made that event possible. Our upcoming events will probably be golf. A lot is still up in the air with restrictions surrounding COVID, so we're working to keep you updated on that. And if you do want to stay updated bi-weekly, feel free to subscribe to our e-news. Thanks.
Thanks, Kelsey. All right, now our feature topic, Canada's ELD implementation update with Andy.
Hey, thanks, Julie. I am not going to turn my camera on because I see everybody freezing and all the other presenters, and I'm hoping that I can present the material without any glitches by doing that. So I'm just going to bring this up here. And can everybody see my screen?
I'm good. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for having me out. Today we're going to talk about ELDs, which is the hot topic. This is my second session. The first session we did in conjunction with Energy Safety Canada, and I went through this and seemed to go over quite well. So I think the material will be well received today, I hope. To help me out throughout the presentation, I've got Colin, Sonia, and Melanie. These ladies and gentlemen are from our supplier ELD vendors. We don't name them because we don't like to highlight people when they help us out through sessions, but they might pop in to help answer some questions we have. So as I go through the presentations, if you could type your questions in the chat area, that would be outstanding. And if they start to build up, maybe what we could do is stop and start to take a couple of those questions as we go. Just stop me and we'll call them out. So for that, will you be taking care of that, Robin, if you see a buildup of the questions, or?
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it on the back end.
Okay, perfect, Rob, thank you. Okay, so we'll get right into this. Today we're going to be talking about electronic logging devices. This is a topic that I've been heavily involved with
for about, oh my goodness, it's been about 3 years now. We've watched the implementation. We've seen what happened. We've seen the announcement with the Transport Minister Garneau, what was it, 2 years ago, December. And we are now approaching the time where we are going to see the final implementation. So looking at logging devices in Canada, Canada formally adopted the ELD regulations, which will become mandatory as of June 2021. Today, we're going to talk about some of the details around the regulations, how to prepare, and staged enforcement like Moore's talked about. So we're not going to see strict enforcement right off the gun. Differences from the regulations in the US and some of the key differences there. And those are really, really important, especially when we have carriers that come out of the US. Regulatory timelines in Canada are a third-party certification process. And then how this will affect, the other big topic is how this will affect Alberta provincial carriers. So let's start off with logging ELDs and what were some of the thoughts and the concepts around the objectives when it came to Transport Canada. And the Government of Canada is really committed to ensuring that our transportation system is, number one, safe, and that we have a nationally competitive market out there. So when it comes to carriers, that the playing field is equal across the board, and nobody has a competitive advantage anymore because they're hopefully not cheating, if they were at all, using paper logs. And that's one of the goals of this new ELD regulation and how they brought ELDs into this. Secondly, the objectives of the amendments are to improve commercial vehicle safety, obviously, administrative efficiencies, and compliance with the regulations. So this is what I really enjoy talking about, is we hear a lot about, oh, this is going to be tough to implement this. And I always think about 2 years ago, and Grant, who's from our board, he was talking about when he implemented this in one of his, it's a tanker company in his company, across Canada. And it was such a even back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was such a small percentage of drivers that didn't accept this, that it was really next to nothing. I haven't even heard of a complaint lately when it comes to people using ELDs. Drivers generally readily accept this equipment. Companies are happy because it's auditing the logs for them more effectively, and it ensures compliance with the hours of service regulations as well. So there's a lot of advantages, and we don't hear about the negativity. I think that there was some stigmatism with it one time. The amendments that were put in place will align us with the US to a degree, mandate the use of ELDs by drivers who are currently maintaining a daily log. So this is kind of key. And this is where I stop again too, and I'm going to talk about this again. But when you think about ELDs, all we're doing is simply, and the regulations now were just changed. So you're replacing paper with an approved and certified electronic device. That's the only difference. The rules remain the same. There's no changes in hours of service or how you would operate. This is going to give you some warnings and some things like this. And that's the cool part about it, is the government hasn't changed anything. We're just trying to make life easier for drivers, for companies, and to ensure compliance across the board. The last objective we'll talk about is the amendments require motor carriers to acquire and install ELDs in their commercial vehicles that operate outside of a 160-kilometer radius of their home terminal. So that was the other key part I thought I'd mention. So whenever you're adopting ELDs, if you were required to operate a paper log now, in the future, you will be required to use a certified ELD. The other big one I get questions about is the 160-kilometer radius. So if I generally operate within the 160-kilometer radius, if I go outside of it for a special trip, do I need to have a log or an ELD, I'm sorry? And the answer is simply, well, you would need a paper logbook. So yes, you will need an ELD. There are no exemptions for this. We'll talk about a little later about some of the exemptions you can apply for that, but we're hearing that Transport Canada isn't going to be tossing those out very readily. So let's talk about electronic logging devices, some of the regulatory details and highlights. So first off that was developed was the ELD technical standard. And that was developed by the Canadian Council of Motor Transport Administrators. And really what that is, and that says, how do these electronic devices need to meet the current legislation out there? So this says that this device must do this, 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 and this. It's got to be certified, and it's got to measure the regulations in this fashion. And they're all compared equally against each other when they're in for certification. So think of the technical standard as, this is how you build an ELD, okay? All ELDs will need to be certified by an accredited third party in accordance to criteria set out in the technical standards. So we said, okay, you've got to build ELDs to a certain standard, right? So now you've built your ELD. Now what's going to happen, and this is just like Morris mentioned, FP Innovations right now is the only company that's certifying ELDs. They will certify all of the ELDs, are in the process of certifying them right now. So when I'm going to click on this link, and we'll send the link out with this presentation when we're done. And this presentation takes you to FP Innovations website. And as you scroll down, it talks about the ELD process, and it says, here's a list of the certified ELDs. Just like what was mentioned, we don't have anybody certified yet. So there's two places to check for right now to see who has been certified. One is FP Innovations, and the other is Transport Canada's website as well too. So two places to check for that. So just to be very clear, this is super critical. Every ELD in Canada will have to be certified. FP Innovation is doing the certification. You need to ensure that the device that you choose to purchase or you currently have is going to meet that ELD technical standard, and that the group certifying it right now is FP Innovations. They'll list the devices once they come approved that are approved. Okay. So now that we know that we've got to certify them, we did talk about one exemption was a 160-kilometer radius, but there's some other exemptions too that have come up in conversations with carriers. So I'm going to quickly run through these. So the regulation says a commercial vehicle will be exempt if it operates under a permit. So typically in Alberta, we see permits being issued for oil field exemptions and or fertilizer out in Saskatchewan, some in Alberta. So that is number one condition. Number two, operated by a motor carrier to which an exemption has been issued under this act. So remember I said you can apply for an exemption, and we'll send that link out where you apply for an exemption if you feel that you may qualify for one. And so you'll have to carry an exemption with you if Transport Canada issues this. Number three, you're subject to a rental agreement under 30 days, okay? So you've rented the truck for less than 30 days. And number four, you're operating a vehicle manufactured before the model year 2000. So this is kind of an interesting one. So I got stumped with this, and I thought I had this stuff down pretty good, and you always get stumped, and I got straightened out with this. So the operate a vehicle manufactured before model year 2000. So that's the key, the wording model year 2000. The model year can be found in the VIN number. So believe it or not, I had one instance where the engine on a truck was manufactured in 1999. It didn't have an OBD2 port, but the model year was 2000, and this question came in. So we looked into this, and we did some research, and I checked with the Canadian Trucking Lines, and it is definitely the model year, and the model year is in the VIN number. So that would be a really good example of when you might apply for an exemption, because we have a one-off. And I don't think you're going to see too many. So those are the exemptions there. So operate by permit, an exemption has been issued, rental agreement, and model year 2000. If you're operating an ELD, we can expect malfunctions to happen and things to happen when out on your road. It's electronic, just like phones and everything else. There's problems with them. The amendments allow for a driver to use a paper log if they have an ELD malfunction. And you can use it for a maximum of 14 days or upon return to your home terminal if it takes you longer than 14 days. So just so you know, always keep a daily log with you in case you have a malfunction. Make very detailed notes as to why you're using a paper log if you've converted over to ELDs so that the officer doesn't question it. There's, nobody's surprised, and you're going to be good to go. Differences from the regulations in the United States to Canada. So this one is particular of importance when it comes to certification. So if you're based out of the US or if you've got trucks in the US, pay real close attention here. So in Canada, we know that our logging devices need to be certified. And in the US, we also know that they need to be certified. The big difference here is in Canada, we have a third-party certifier, and only that third-party certifier who's been approved by Transport Canada can approve these. In the US, you self-certify, and then they will list you on the FMCSA website. Big difference. If you have a US ELD, which has been self-certified, and it comes into Canada, it is not acceptable. It must have a Canadian third-party certification. So this is super critical. If you purchased equipment from the US, please ensure that the vendor is getting it certified to Canadian standards. Being certified to the FMCSA CFR 49 doesn't cut it. Are there any questions on that one? Because I don't want to see anybody get stuck on that. Big key difference here, and that's an important one. How are we doing for questions, Rob?
So far, Andy, I've asked people to hold off to the end of your presentation just in case you answer the question within your presentation. So we'll do a little Q&A session after you're done, and then when people want to hang out after the 1 o'clock hour to stay with the tailgate meeting, we can delve further into that so that not everybody is occupied by this topic.
Okay, perfect. I just thought I'd check there because this one sometimes can be a big hamper for some companies, but it sounds like we're doing pretty good. So just to double reinforce this, if you're running equipment from the US, it has to be certified to Canadian standards, please. Make sure you double check that with your provider. So regulatory timelines, and a few people have touched on this already. The Canadian Trucking Alliance, along with PSAC and other organizations, have been working with the federal, provincial, municipality, or governments to come up with an ELD enforcement strategy. The CTA did a great job of really leading this effort. We're involved in conversations for the past, I think it's been about 4 months, maybe longer than that, 4 months now. And as you can tell from Sergeant Steen's comments, it's well understood by enforcement that we are moving into a staged enforcement strategy. All provinces have begun the development of a plan. It's expected the plan will be completed by the end of May, okay? So Morris said they're still waiting on things. Well, it's coming. We've been told it's coming. They've been told it's coming. It's up to each individual province to update their the provincial policies on how they will do this staged enforcement. To my understanding, everybody is pretty much falling in line. And just like Morris says, there's going to be soft enforcement for a 1-year period. It will get more and more stringent as that year goes, but until we see the plan, I don't want to get in and dive into too many details, but be aware of that. So if you don't have an ELD provider now, it's time to find one, okay? It's clear that there are provinces, it's clear there are provinces that are aligned to phase. Okay, all the provinces again are aligned for a phased in enforcement period. Some of you may have heard Quebec is just holding back right now on all enforcement. That's fine. They're just taking a more relaxed stance. So we know that regardless, the implementation date is still June. It's just the CTA, PSAC, and different organizations have worked with the CCMTA to come up with that staged enforcement plan. So we're on track, but understanding that there aren't certified devices yet and that they're coming real soon, we are going to have that staged enforcement period. So hopefully nobody gets caught with that. One of the other things I want to talk about is ELD training considerations. So what are the major changes that drivers can expect if they have not used an ELD before? Well, as you know, we have an aged workforce and we've got to take that into consideration. And it will take people some time to adapt to the new electronics. Just like when we're all getting used to this virtual environment, I know when we started using Teams, it took me a bit of time before I got used to it. And I was like, I'm not a big fan of this, but we all got used to it real quick. Another good question is, who else in my organization needs to be trained on ELDs? And this has never changed, but I want to emphasize this because it sometimes gets forgotten. Under the federal regulation, it requires anyone who has basically any authority over a driver to be trained on the hours of service regulation. And they're going to have to now, on top of understanding the regulation, which is super important, you have to know the regulations, but you also have to understand how to operate your ELD, okay? So that means managers, dispatchers, back office staff, health and safety staff, all have to be trained in the legislative requirements around fatigue management, but they also have to be trained on how to use the device that you've chosen. And the next thing that we'll talk about is why is it important that other team members other than drivers are trained? Okay, I covered that. How do I ensure the best driver experience when onboarding ELDs? And that's good training, time and training. So anytime we implement something, change management is the biggest problem that most organizations have, and communicating the message out. We all have heard of this before. So taking the time to really plan a staged enforcement, whether you're a smaller company or a bigger company, and you take the time to train your drivers, train your back office staff on how to operate this, how to pull the logs, how to make changes, edit ELDs and things like that. All of those questions have to take time, and getting the devices into a driver's hands is super critical, important too. When you formally decide to switch over, right now, you've only got a 2-week period to do it. That was the last guidance that came out. So once you do that conversion, you can run a paper and the electronic thing for up to 2 weeks. Now that guidance may be loosened up or tightened up or may change slightly down now, but from the past, that's what was in place. And the last thing that is really important that we talk about is provincially regulated carriers. So provincially regulated carriers are companies with a provincial national safety code certificate that only travel within the province and that have a gross weight of 11,794 kilograms or more, or have a seating capacity of 11 or more persons, okay? And that company is only registered to operate within Alberta. We have our provincial hours of service regulations, and those regulations have not changed. So right now, if you're operating under the provincial regulations, you don't need to move to an ELD. The province has talked about adopting the federal regs down the road, but we haven't heard anything about that. So clear distinction. Federally, you definitely need to have an ELD. You should be implementing it now. You need to be looking at who's going to be certified and who you could possibly use in the future. Provincial carriers, you don't need to worry about it, although the benefits of an ELD, as far as I'm concerned, outweigh not having one. So I would recommend that you look at it. So that's kind of it. Those are the big topics and kind of an update as to where we are with the legislation now. Rob, why don't we go through some of the questions and see what we can knock off?
Okay, so I'm gonna open the floor now to questions regarding the ELD mandate. So if you have any questions about, how it's going to get implemented and everything, we'll try to answer those now. If you have questions about which provider should I try, who's better, let's hold on to those ones until the tailgate, because we can't, as the AMTA, we can't really endorse one way or the other. From Susan, she wants to know, she has a couple of vehicles that travel outside the 160K radius once or twice per year. Must they have an ELD installed? And I think you kind of answered it with your last slide, but go ahead.
Absolutely. There are no exemptions. If you are operating outside of the 160-kilometer radius, you will need an ELD for those trips. Companies have talked about portable bag units and things like that for the odd time that those happen, but I know of no exemptions to this point, and I could be corrected, but I know of nothing, no exemptions for that.
And just to be clear, that we're talking federal carrier.
Federal carriers, yes, sir, not provincial.
So Susan, I hope we answered that one there. If not, typey, and I'll ask it again. Any other questions regarding the implementation or anything along those lines? We also have the 3 industry experts as well who can talk about the back end side of things, how you as a carrier can reap the benefits of the ELD.
Hey Andy, it's Colin Lolliker. Did you want me to jump in on a couple thoughts here?
Yeah, sure. By all means, Colin.
Sure. So thank you very much, everybody. Good afternoon. Andy, that was a great presentation. I've been within the ELD industry for a few years now. I'm currently a national account manager with a provider. A couple of questions that you should be asking to these companies. I've been watching the chat light up here with people talking about who they're talking with and who they're meeting with. A couple of the big questions to ask them are, will you adapt or modify your program to the ELD to be compliant with Canadian ELD? That should be a natural yes. Everyone who you're talking to at this point.
Oh, Colin, did we lose you?
Question is, what is their plan? If you're not getting the idea that they are being fully transparent with you where they are within the process, if they're not able to fully outline what the process looks like, that should be putting up some red flags for you. It's no secret, no carrier provider is, or no provider is certified at this point, but there are quite a few in the process. Our company has been in the process for quite a while now, working its way through. I can answer some questions on what that process actually looks like, so you can do a bit of fact checking with the companies that you sit down with. To give you a basic idea, every provider is allowed to certify up to 3 devices. If you're only certifying 1 device, it will be right around a 6-week process from the time they are given a date to start certification. That doesn't mean they say, hey, we're ready to go on April 28th and we're going to start the process. FP Innovations will meet with them, they'll go through the initial screening, and then they will give them a date. So if they haven't applied yet or gotten into the queue yet, it could be mid-May before they even start their certification process, which would be a 6-week process minimum. If you have more than 1 device, it now goes up to a minimum of an 8-week process. And that will cover off the devices. There's a lot of companies out there, some of them have up to 18 different telematics devices. They're only allowed to choose 3 for their first run through. So if you're meeting with somebody, make sure you ask, is the device I'm looking at right now on your list to get certified? Have you got it into certification? What is your projected end date? Have you had any issues at this point? And you should get a fully transparent answer at that point. What happens if, when in testing, they find a problem with the device they're looking at? And that's what's taking so long, guys, is there are problems being found on almost, at this point, every device that's being certified or looked at, there have been issues found. Transport Canada has changed the testing procedures 3 times up to this point as recently as this week. So you've got engineering teams writing code for these devices. They are getting changed on the fly to meet Transport Canada's changes, because once they got into the testing process, they realized that the procedures they had out there didn't work. An example of that would be under the OBD2 test, a vehicle, Transport Canada wanted a vehicle to give an hour reading every 15 minutes. Most vehicles only throw that out once an hour. So everyone's code was set up for once an hour because that's what they had built their devices for, and that's what the vehicles are able to produce. Transport Canada has now acknowledged that and said, oh, we need to change up that procedure. So that's what's taking so long with a lot of these devices. If a problem is found outside of a technical problem like that, the provider has 30 days to rectify that problem. So if you get caught on, on your road test and something isn't reporting the way it should, you now have 30 days to get that fixed, and then you can jump back into line. So again, if you're interviewing a provider and they say, yep, we're in the process, they need to be able to tell you, have you had any problems, and are you in a 30-day fix period? Once you enter back in for the certification process again, and they find another problem on that same device, that device is now excluded out of the program. It's gone. The companies will have to pay another $50,000 fee to get it back in line to get tested, and then they can start the process all over again. If the device that had found the 30-day problem passes its retest, they move on to the next device. If they find a problem on that one, they're not out of the process, but they have another 30-day window. So you can see how this can drag on and on and on and on, and not be able to hit that June 12th date. There are some companies in the queue that likely will hit the June 12th date. It will be just before the wire. And that's what I mean. You need to start asking these questions, especially if you're just in that procurement phase and you're not currently running any sort of electronic log AOBRD device in your vehicles at this point. So these are just some of the questions you need to be asking.
Okay, so I got to we're bumping up against the 1 o'clock hour here. So I just want to hit some of these questions that have come through the chat super quick here. So Susan said they are a provincial carrier only. So Andy, do they need to worry about ELDs?
No, not at this time. The provincial legislation is not changing, and there is no requirement to use an approved electronic device provincially.
Okay, Anita has asked, is there a list of ELD providers who have applied for certification?
There is a small list from the CTA. The best is to check with your provider directly sooner than later. And just like Colin said, ask them those tough questions. So that was great, Colin. Thank you.
Okay, Jerome, what about rental trucks?
30-day lease is the maximum. If it's over 30 days, you will need an ELD in it. If there's multiple 30-day leases, you will be running into some hot water. Maybe Sonia or Melanie, has that question come up to you? Because I don't have a good answer for that one. Can anyone help me out on that part of it? If there's multiple leases, I don't remember what was being said about that now.
Andy, it's Sonia. Yeah, in regards to the 30-day lease, like you have I think it falls under the exemption from an HRS perspective, but from an ELD option, you can have a device in the vehicle. If you have a mobile unit, for example, that can log and interact with the system that you have as a whole. Couple different ways to approach it.
Hey, perfect. One of the things we'll do is, one of the questions too is, will there be a transcript? I've got a whole series of questions, which I've done up or working on from the Energy Safety Canada. If we cut and paste these and send them to me, Rob, I'll include these ones in my things, and then I'll send them out to our ELD supplier experts to help out with the answers to validate and make sure that, I don't get stuck up. Any more questions there that we can answer?
There are many. Dwayne wants to know, what about vehicles that will become over 4,500 kgs once a trailer is attached? Will they require an ELD at that time?
Yes.
All the time, rather.
It is a combined weight. So as soon as Alberta's one of the few places where you can have registered weight on the trailer. If you hook up to that, if your truck is 4,400 kilograms and your trailer is registered for 1,000, you hook between the two, you will need an ELD.
So will you have to run that ELD at all times?
You will need to run an ELD. The driver will need a driver's file. The only way to remove that is if you downgrade that driver and change your driver's file from a NSC driver's file down to a non-NSC driver's file. And that takes a lot of work because you're actually having to retrain, pull abstracts and things like that. So I would recommend if you cross over that boundaries, if you pull a trailer every now and then, operate an ELD all the time, you can access most of these systems too via computer web pages and stuff to record hours. But good question. Thank you.
Okay, safety busy.
Rob,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just sorry, it's Julie. I'm just going to interrupt here because it is after the 1 o'clock hour, and I just want to remind everybody before people start dropping off that the next meeting is on May 26th. So, and we will be having a tailgate right after this meeting. So, go ahead, Rob.
Okay, so I'm going to pause the ELD discussion for a second then. Are there any questions roundtable not related to ELD? Because we will continue this ELD conversation into the tailgate meeting. So any roundtable style, anything from anyone? Let me scroll through the multiple messages I've been getting here. So I've got a few people stepping out. I don't see anything coming in as a roundtable type of question. So Julie, I'll turn it over to you if you want to adjourn the formal meeting, and then we'll move into tailgate.
Sure, that sounds really great. So thanks everybody for being a part of this today. We really appreciate everybody that's shown up. If you have any suggestions on topics that you're interested in, make sure to reach out to Cliff. Also, make sure you continue to send your submissions in for Driver of the Month, and have a safe rest of your week.
Yeah, and so anybody else who wants to hang out, that is the end of the formal meeting. As Julie said, we are moving into tailgate discussion now, so this is your opportunity to network and ask a few questions. I'm going to continue with the questions that came in through the chat. So Safety Busy Transport wants to know, how does it work for companies on the oil well exemption permit?
Companies that are operating on the oil well exemption permit, remember, if you're operating under a federally approved permit, you do not need to operate an ELD. So if you have a federal oil field permit, you are exempt. There is no requirement for ELD providers to develop the ELD rules for that rule set.
So that kind of answers the next question from them. Are drivers exempt from using an ELD while operating on the permit?
Yes.
What about if he takes a load that does not qualify for the permit? So I'm going to answer that one slightly. If you are doing a hot shot run, you cannot run under the permit. You can only run under the permit if you're going to and from a site, be it oil and gas or a well. So the second you start running hot shots, you are cycle driver and not permit driver. And then next question, does the driver... Sorry, go ahead.
It's Sonia. I was just going to add to that and validate, because we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. I think, too, the fact of the matter being that an oil field exemption is based on an individual person, right? So if you have a truck, the truck is not exempt. So it still needs to be outfit and supported to run ELDs. And again, like if you are doing a run and it's not related to oil field services or whatever, then you also have to fill an ELD. So you got to be very specific in terms of how we're setting up the vehicle for that, right?
Right, great point. So yeah, to Sonia's point, it's the driver that is under permit or cycle. And like I said, if you're under cycle, you have to run logs. So like she said, the truck better have a device in it. Does the driver then have to switch to using an ELD when he switches his cycle off the permit? So I think I just answered that one. If you're on cycle, you got to be running an ELD.